Hello and welcome to another edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where with some trepidation today I'm going to cover one of the most interesting forms of puzzles that appears on the Nikoli website. Nikoli is, I think, every puzzle solver's dream website. It consists of about 10 different types of puzzle, and it releases 4 or 5 every day. And you can race to solve them against the very fastest solvers in the world. And after you've solved them, you can look at exactly how they solved it, because it's all stored on the site. It's very user-friendly. I think it costs about £2 a month. It's the best value entertainment you'll find anywhere. And one of the puzzle types that they like to do occasionally is called Numberlink. And the rules are fairly simple. I'll just get rid of the holding thing on the screen. And you can see we've got a grid full of squares, and some of the squares contain numbers. And the idea is that you should link the numbers. So you can see there's 2 number 1s in the grid. You need to link them by going through orthogonally boxes. There are a couple of additional rules. In Nikoli versions of Numberlink, every cell needs to contain a line by the end. And we'll see that that leads to some interesting properties. And one of the things I should start by saying is that I don't think there is in inverted commas, a method that will always solve these quickly. There is a certain amount of observation that's required. And then on top of that, there's a little bit of technique that you can use to assist you in coming up with solutions. This weekend, Nikoli ran 2 prize puzzles. So both of this size, both very difficult. You can see the extra hard difficulty. Oh, you might not be able to see that, but I can assure you it's extra hard difficulty. Both puzzles took me 8 minutes 15 seconds, which was okay. It wasn't a winning time, but I was reasonably happy with it. But I've spent quite a while trying to get better at these puzzles. I'm still floundering behind some of the best in the world, but anyway, let's talk about what I do when I look at these puzzles. And the first thing I'll always try and do, if possible, is to use the edges, especially corners that don't contain numbers. So you can see here that given that we know that every cell needs to contain a line, we can draw that in. I mean, that's absolutely forced. But the other thing that I should have mentioned about Nikoli puzzles is that the line can't sort of go back on itself. So you couldn't have a line that did this, wandered all over the place. It sort of has to move in its most natural way, and that means I can extend this line 1 further square, and that means, and because that is going to be an inefficient way of the number 1, for example, moving, we can actually go further and we can do this. And similarly, again, because the line can't go back on itself, we can actually extend that into this, which might not have been obvious when you first looked at the puzzle, but is in fact the case. And again, we can go further, keep going, and we can get here without any effort at all. Now, we can go slightly further, but I'm going to come back to this top left square, because we can do the same down here, so let's do it. Again, because we can't have inefficient lines, we can actually get to this point. And now I want to return just to this top left section here and talk about something that I've realised from doing these puzzles over the years, that again might not be obvious, and I'm hoping you won't ask me to prove it, because it's not that easy to demonstrate. But we need to think about how these lines move now. Whether this is going to go this way, or let's imagine that we thought, oh well, there's a 2 right over in the right-hand corner of the top right-hand corner of the grid, and there's this 2 here. Well, they look like they might be joined by this line, perhaps. So we might try and do that. Well, you could try and do that, but in fact, that will break. And the reason it will break is due to an odd property that occurs at corners in these sorts of puzzles. So just as we said in the very top left-hand corner of the screen, where we had a corner, we were able to start drawing lines. So we can with any corner. The same logic will apply. We need to reach this cell here. And then because we can't have lines going back on themselves, we need to do this. And you can see that we can start to propagate this line of corners down the grid. Let's just keep doing it until we reach here. We've reached the edge of the grid, and now we have to ask ourselves, what could this line do? Well, I mean, it could do that, but if it does that and joins to there, you can see that this line now has to get inefficient because it has to come back on itself. And if it does that, it could have just done that. So that's not possible. It could go that way, but again, it's inefficient. So in fact, we're able to, through this chain of logic and propagating this series of corners, we're able to rule out the fact that this line originally moves in that way. So this does not connect to the 2. Does not do this. For similar reasons, this line doesn't connect to the 2 either. Now, given this, I think it should be fairly clear for people to see. I mean, again, this sort of thing is inefficient, so impossible. That this is in fact the only way that this line can move. And that feels good as well, because again, we get a limited corner here, as I like to call it. We get this pattern. And one of the things that it's worth noting here is I've done all this without even considering, you know, the positions of any of the numbers. You know, I haven't said, oh, this 22 looks quite close to this 22, and you know, how could I try and develop a line that might, you know, get there like this. All I've done so far is to use sort of forced logic chains that come out from the particular rules that apply to this puzzle. So now we're left trying to, for the first time I think, trying to actually think about how numbers might need to move in order to move around the grid. And one of the things that is immediately obvious to me anyway is this 20 obviously needs to get over here somehow. This 19 needs to attach to this 19 somehow. And then this 3, well, somehow that has to connect all the way down here. So if we can imagine a line that's going to join this 3 to this 3, you can see it's going to have to be fairly spectacularly complicated in order to not start to isolate numbers on one side of the line that need to be able to traverse to the other side of the line. And one of the ways that I make progress from this sort of position is I try and imagine where I might be able to draw a corner like that, and whether the effect of drawing that corner would be to cause me a problem in terms of the corner propagation that we talked about earlier. So in fact, a corner there, you can see, actually looks quite nice because it fits nicely around the 6 there. So let's just try that. Let's see how that might develop. And that's one of the features of these puzzles, by the way, is that they do involve trial and error. I think, anyway, in order to be sure and confident that you're solving them. So we've drawn a corner in here, and we're going to propagate that like this. So how might that work? Well, you can now see there's a possible way of connecting the 19s now, simply by doing this. Let's see if this This might be helpful. Again, if we do this, I hope it's clear that that's going to break immediately, because that's going to connect the 7 and the 20. So we can't do that. So this looks like it's going to develop in this way. Oh, and in fact, that looks quite nice, because I want to connect this 5 to this 5, and this 9 looks like it needs to go upwards. So if I was to do that, that would be an extremely unnatural thing to do in terms of this 9, because this 9's then got to sort of loop round and go all the way up here in order to connect over here. So I don't like that. I'm not yet certain that the 5 will connect to this line, but I'm absolutely certain this 9 won't. So let's continue. We can now start to sort of draw our lines a bit further out. See where we're going to get to. Oh, and you can see now that this is going to cause an issue if I go much further, because the 4 here, I don't want to connect this to the 5. So this 4 needs to turn. It can't turn down because that would be inefficient. So it needs to turn up, and that forces everything to turn up. And that does force this 5 to connect here. So we're starting to make progress, and one of the ways that you can actually feel like you're getting the right number here is where your answer looks like this, with nice neat turns, corners propagating up to numbers. This definitely has the correct feel to it, and I would be excited if I was solving the puzzle at this point, because I would think I was onto something. So let's go as far as this. Now, again here a little tip. We can see that this 4 line is now aiming directly at this 4. That looks pretty good. I can not see a good reason why this line would need to turn. So let's extend it, and you can see that the 5 can just naturally come round the 4 here. Oops, give that. Connects. That again looks nice. How are we going to connect 7 and the 9 here to this 9 and 7, while still allowing this 6 to come all the way over here? Well, it should be fairly obvious, but if this 6 is coming all the way over here, this 9 and this 7 need to go behind it. So let's do that like that, which means that it's not connecting to the 3 actually. We can actually go all the way like this, and 7, 7, 7. This is now aiming correctly. This is now aiming correctly, and these 2 lines can escape. So I can't connect a 3 to a 1, that's not going to work. Okay, so now, so this 3, and again, whenever we get the corner, let's use the corner. Make sure that we extend the corner as far as we can, because in every situation where you can use the corner, you know, that ability is invaluable in these puzzles. So again, I can see a way I want the 1 to work here, by the way. What I'm thinking is I want to do this. Like that, because you can see that 12 is going to come in like this, and then when I extend the corners again, I'm getting nice patterns around numbers. So which is what I really want to see. And again here we can extend this line slightly and join this to this. And now we're left with a decision to make regarding this 6, which we need to connect somehow to the bottom right hand corner of the grid. Now, one option would be to sort of extend it this way with a view to either, I don't know, joining it up with this line. Now, I'm not saying this is wrong for sure, but I really don't like this as a pattern now, because this is going to force my 13 to do this, and you can see I'm starting to have to propagate an awful long way, and I'm going to hit that 16 like this, It just does not feel right to me at all to do that. And I would reject that as a likely continuation. It may turn out to be correct, but I would really be surprised. So I would be wanting to move the 6 down like this. Yeah, and in fact now, I look, connecting this 14 here, that looks a better option to me. So my gut instinct is telling me that that is better, and then I can do a 13 like that and make a nice corner for the 17. And again, I know this sounds this probably sounds crazy the way I'm approaching this puzzle, because I'm using the, if you like, the geometry of the grid rather than the numbers themselves a lot of the time to feel my way towards a solution. But I really believe this is how this is the most efficient way of solving these puzzles, especially when they contain so much white space. You know, you do develop a feel for them, and that's what we're trying to do, or learn how to do, in this video. Now, around this point, I would be now looking back over here to see how I need to extend this 2. So this 2 needs to connect right the way over here. And again, I can see just by doing that as a possibility, this makes nice corners. It makes these corners which surround the 15. Well, that looks good based off what we've been discussing. So I'm going to be prepared to guess that that's correct, and I can see a way immediately of connecting the 22 up, which looks good. So let's again, and now look at the massive propagation I'm going to get down here. Again, it looks good because it's hitting the 18 at a corner. So let's continue with that and see whether that could be correct. I think that has to join the 15. So and I'm trying to make sure that we keep to our logic of not going back on ourselves. So this 15 is going downwards. This is connected to the 3. Well, that looks perfect, doesn't it? Because the 3 needs to connect to that bottom right hand corner somehow, and I think by connecting this and this, that's what's going to happen. So it still looks a bit difficult, doesn't it, to connect this 15 with this 15 nicely. But I think we need to go with this. You can see here we've got another opportunity to fill in a corner, and that means the 16 has to go down, which is quite interesting. Let's just fill that in like that. And I think it should be obvious as well that following the logic we've been running regarding corners, if I was to create a corner like this, which I mean is really wrong anyway because it's a 20, that's not going to work, so we need to go up here. At this point you need to think about how are we going to get this 6 to connect to this 6, given the fact that the 21 is sort of a higher line than the 6 here. So the 21 clearly needs to loop around the outside of the 6 line. So the 6 could go down, but it looks far more natural to me anyway that the 21 can go here like this, and then the 6 could loop round to find its partner like this. So this is the sort of thing I'd be thinking about and then wondering whether or not this might work. So let's just, again, see a corner here. Let's propagate. Let's see what that might give us. Okay, it's giving us quite a complicated series of lines here, but it's not, doesn't look impossible. And then here again, that looks fine. Again, just propagating the corners down like so. Okay, so let's just maybe have to extend these slightly further, but I want to concentrate more on what's going on over here and thinking about whether or not this this might work for us. So we've got a 17 here, so I can see how I want that to go around the very edge. And we've got 21, 15 here. And clearly the 20 line here needs to somehow connect. And I think it has to go up, because you can see that's not going to work. I hope it's clear that that extension of this line doesn't work, because that forces a 17 to do this sort of thing. So we have to move this up, and then that's going to create another corner like this. Ugh, this looks really tricky, doesn't it? Let's see. It's not completely ruled out though, so let's just continue with the logic here and see whether this incredibly complicated series of lines could somehow give us something helpful. Okay, so I made an error there. You can see I've extended this line into the 18. I don't think that's actually strictly necessary. I think this could come down like this, and that might work better. Let's see. So now this can't join to the 11 because that would be inefficient. So that could join to the 20, and this now starts to look interesting. So that does allow us to connect 17. Does that allow us to? It might allow us to connect the 8. Let's just carry on with this. Let's see where these lines are all going to. So if that goes like this, yeah, that's going to work, isn't it? Wow, what an incredible finish. I say that somebody who's solved this puzzle before. And there we go. So I hope this has been interesting in that it's shown my approach, at least, to these quite complicated puzzles. There was another extra hard one this weekend too, which I'll also do a vlog on, just so that we can see how that differed from this one and whether these techniques are universally applicable. But yeah, we want to cover different sorts of puzzles, so please let us know if there's any other puzzles you'd like us to do. I'm sure we'll do others from the Nikoli website in due course, and we'll see you again next time.